Hey, what's up guys, welcome to Cert Bros. In this video we're going to be talking about OSPF. Okay, so OSPF, what is it? Well, OSPF is a widely used and widely supported routing protocol. It's an open standard, meaning pretty much any router will support it. It's an interior gateway protocol, meaning it's been designed to be used within a single autonomous system. OSPF is also a link state protocol. So, the goal of a routing protocol is of course to learn routes. Now the way OSPF does this is by learning about every router and subnet within the entire network. The result is every router has the same information about the network as each other. The way routers learn this information is by sending out what's called link state advertisements, or LSAs. Now these LSAs contain information about the subnet, router, and some other network information. Once all LSAs have been flooded, OSPF keeps all of this information in a link state database. This is also known as an LSDB. The goal here is to have each router with the same information in their LSDBs. So that's the general goal of OSPF. Let's take a deeper look at how this actually works. There are three main steps to this process. First, becoming OSPF neighbours. This is where connecting routers running OSPF agree to form neighbour relationships. Next, exchanging database information. After becoming neighbours, the routers will then exchange their LSDB information. And finally, choosing the best routes. Once the LSDB information has been exchanged, each router will then choose the best routes to be added to the routing table. This is done by running a calculation called SPF. First, we'll look at how connecting routers form neighbour relationships. Okay, so the very first thing that needs to happen before a relationship is formed is each router needs to choose a router ID. A router ID is a number that can be used to identify an individual router, kind of like an OSPF name. The router ID, or RID, is in the format of an IPv4 address, but can be set to whatever you like. So there are a few ways that you can set a router ID. You can either set it manually, or you can let the router decide for itself. So here's the logic that routers go through when choosing router IDs. First, check if it's been manually set. If it's been manually set, that is the router ID. If it's not been manually set, then the router will choose the highest up loopback IP address. If there are no loopback interfaces on the router, it will then choose the highest up non-loopback IP address. Essentially, it will choose the highest IP address on the router. Okay, so let's take a look at two routers. Once OSPF is configured, and we have our router IDs, the routers will reach out to potential neighbours with a friendly "Hello" message. This message contains some important information, including the unique router ID and any already known neighbours. The hello messages also let their existing neighbours know that they're still alive and kicking. Once router 2 receives the hello message, it runs some checks. It's important to note here that there are some very strict requirements that need to be met when OSPF forms neighbour relationships. If you run into problems with OSPF, it's highly likely that the problem will be with one of these. The area ID needs to be the same. This is used when scaling up OSPF and will be covered in another video. The connecting links between the two routers must be on the same subnet. The hello and dead timers must be the same. The dead timer is how long a router will wait without hearing a hello message before it just assumes that neighbour is dead. The default hello timer is every 10 seconds for point-to-point and broadcast networks. If using authentication, this must also match, and the stub area flag must match as well. routers will also need unique router IDs. Okay, so once the checks have been made and if all is good, then the routers can move to what's called the init state. Router 2 then sends a hello message of its own. This message not only lists its own router ID, but also router 1's ID as a known neighbour. So when router 1 receives this hello message, it sees itself as a known neighbour. This allows router 1 to move to the two-way state. Router 1 then sends yet another hello message, listing router 2 as a known neighbour. This then allows router 2 to enter the two-way state as well. And after all of that, we now have two neighbouring routers. Before moving on to the step of exchanging database information, first we must look at designated routers, or DRs, and backup designated routers, or BDRs. DRs and BDRs are not elected on point-to-point connections, so we need to take a very quick detour. In this network, we have 6 routers all connected on the same segment. Let's say we don't have any DRs or BDRs and all routers become full neighbours with each other. If one link goes down, the affected router will let all the other neighbours know what just happened. Then, each router that receives this update will then tell all of their neighbours. Very quickly, things begin to get a little bit out of control. And this would happen every time a change occurs. Instead, a DR and BDR is elected. The election of a DR and BDR is done based on the highest OSPF priority. Now, the priority is set to 1 by default, but this can be changed to influence the election. If the priority ties, then the election is based on the highest router ID. When on the same segment, routers will only become full neighbours with DRs and BDRs. The other neighbours will remain in the two-way state we just looked at. This means every router will ignore updates unless they come from the DR. So let's look what happens now. So the link goes down, the router floods the updates, and the other routers ignore it. Then the DR refloods the update, and now the other routers pay attention. Ah, look at that. Much better. Okay, so back to our diagram. Once the exchange process starts, both routers enter the xstart state. At this point, the routers select a slave and master. This is based on the router ID. The master will control the sequence numbers and start the exchange process. Thankfully, we don't need to know much more than that. Now we move on to the exchange state. Both routers send each other a list of their LSAs. This is called a database description, or DBD. Now on to the loading state. Each router will look over the DBD and request any information it doesn't already have. The reason it does this is to prevent loops by requiring the routers to request the information rather than just firing out updates. So, as an example, router 1 sees that router 2 has the LSA for 192.168.3.0. So it says, can you send me over the 3.0 network? And then sends a request. This request is called a link state request, or LSR. Router 2 responds with, sure, here you go, and sends a link state update, or LSU. Router 1 then sends over a link state acknowledgement, or LSAC. Now the same happens again for router 2. Router 2 sends a request for the 1.0 subnet. Router 1 sends the LSU. And router 2 sends an LSAC. Once the exchange of LSAs has completed, both routers enter the full neighbour state. Now remember, this is a point-to-point network. On a broadcast, like we saw earlier, they will only form the full neighbour relationship with DRs and BDRs. Okay, so on to the last step, adding the best routes to the routing table. The way OSPF chooses the best routes is by using a metric called cost. OSPF cost is a value given to a link based on the bandwidth of that interface. The sum to work out the cost is the reference value, which is set on the router itself, and is 100,000 kilobits per second by default, divided by the interface bandwidth. Okay, so don't worry too much about the sum. Just try and remember these cost values. Serial interfaces. 1,544 kilobits per second. This is a cost of 64. Ethernet. 10,000 kilobits per second. A cost of 10. Fast Ethernet. 100,000 kilobits per second. This is a cost of 1. Now anything faster than Fast Ethernet will also be a cost of 1. Now you might be thinking that doesn't make much sense, and you'd be right. The way to change this would be to change the reference value in the sum we looked at earlier. This can be configured by you on the router itself. Let's go through a quick cost example and see how this works. Okay, so we have a 5-router network here. In this example, router 1 wants to add the route for 10.0.0.0 to its routing table. As you can see, it has 3 options. It can go through router 4, 2, or 5. To make this decision, it will do some simple math to calculate the cost of each one. First, router 4. The first link is 1,544 kilobits per second. So this is a cost of 64. The next link is also 1,544 kilobits per second. So another cost of 64. Finally, the last link is 10 megabits per second, which is a cost of 10. So all of this means the first route has a total cost of 138. Next, router 2. The first link is 10 megabits per second, so a cost of 10. Again, the next link is also 10 megabits per second. And we already know the last link is 10 megabits per second. So this means router 2 gives us a total cost of 30. Last but not least, router 5. The first link is 100 megabits per second this time. This means a cost of 1. The second link is also 100 megabits per second. And the last link, as we know, is 10 megabits per second. The total cost for router 5 is 12. So as I'm sure you've guessed already, the lowest cost is the best. So as router 5 has the best cost to the 10.0.0.0 subnet, this route is the winner and it is added to the routing table. Okay, so that is it for OSPF. There's so much more we could talk about, but I think that's enough for one video. If you liked this video, then remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Oh, and by the way, if you're sat there thinking, wait, what the f is a router? Well, that's just the way us Brits like to say router. Thank you for watching.